Hi everyone, today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth review of the Xtension 2-player multi-game console control board Pro Edition from Recroom Masters. This is a very interesting control panel. I'll be the first one to say that. They currently have 4 available for consumers. The first one is a normal emulator edition one that includes a trackball. The second one, which is the Pro Edition, the one that I'm going to be reviewing here, has more of a traditional fight stick layout on it and has Sanwa buttons and joysticks. They also offer an Emulator Edition Plus that again has the trackball as well as some spinners and additional buttons. And lastly, an Ultimate Edition that looks just to be a 4-player unit. Now the first question of why did I choose this one over an Emulator Edition one, as this is going to be going into a custom pedestal unit I'm building. Well, I don't have anything that really uses the trackball. I'm not a Golden Tee fan, and I like the look and feel of Sanwa buttons better than hat buttons, so I thought this would be a great place to start. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos or know anything about me and what I like to build, I'm all about customization and replacing buttons, joysticks, or anything else that needs to be done. And this stick offers a lot of bonuses as far as that goes. It is apparently all Sanwa parts inside, and from what I've seen just off of my basic touches and feels on it, they definitely feel like Sanwa buttons indeed. So, this video is going to be broken up into a few different sections, and I'm going to put it down in the description as you may only be interested in a few of the particular sections. I'm going to have this review broken down into a few different sections. The first one is going to be the overall look and feel of the control board or control panel. And I'm also going to go through a number of the negative comments that I was able to find online about it. I think there's a lot of misinformation about this board, and I want to address those one by one to allow you, the consumers, a better opportunity to make a more educated purchase. I will state right off the bat that this was not endorsed by Xtension or Recroom Masters in any way. I did pay full price for this. And if they're listening and they want to send me stuff, I definitely won't say no to it. The other sections that we'll be going over are internal construction, modding, and then lastly, how it performs on various consoles, as well as PC, Mac, and with the Raspberry Pi through Linux. We're going to start with the first section, which is just going to be an overview of the control panel as it stands out of the box. No modifications, nothing. I haven't even plugged it into a computer yet. We're going to talk about the build quality of it and just everything as it came to me. We're also going to go over all of the negative points that I was able to find online about this and try and address them one by one. Might not be able to do all of them right now, but we'll definitely go through them as we go through this video. For starters, this thing is huge. A lot bigger than I thought it was going to be, even though they do have dimensions listed on their website. How big is it, you might ask? Let's take a quick look. From end to end, we are measuring about 36.5 inches by 14.5 inches, a little bit smaller. It's a big control panel, and I really like that. That's going to work out well for the pedestal build that I'm putting together. I'm going to be using a 50-inch or possibly a 46-inch TV with. Build quality on this thing is great. I have no concerns out of the box with it. Just so everyone has a better idea of some of the negative points that I found on this before we get going, I'm going to go through those. The first one is that it does not actually have Sanwa parts inside. That one's a little bit concerning to me, but should be fairly easy to figure out. Next one is that it has an 8-minute timeout on PS4. We'll take a look inside and see what's happening there. Next one, this was also really concerning to me because I think there's going to be kids using this. It has sharp plexi corners. Next is an unfinished bottom. Next one is no bottom cover whatsoever. Next one is no measurements for putting inside of a cabinet or something. Next one is does not work on PC Mac. And the last one I have here is does not work on the Raspberry Pi. Let's start with the most obvious one, which is does not have Sanwa parts. I can tell you, these definitely do feel like Sanwa buttons. And that definitely does feel like a Sanwa joystick. The top buttons, however, do not feel like Sanwa. These buttons are apparently illuminated. I don't know if I expected them to be Sanwa, since I'm not going to be mashing them or using them on a regular basis inside of games. Not too concerned about that. But it is worth noting that these top illuminated buttons do not feel like they are SANWA. When we open it up, we'll take a closer look and see if I'm right or wrong on that. Now, for as large as this control panel is, if we move it up here, hopefully you can see on the video that it is really just enclosed in an unfinished box. This would be saying it drops into a cabinet you've already got. Let's see if I can take a measurement of this real quick. You're looking at pretty much 30 1/4 on the dot. It's just a hair smaller than that, but if you're putting this into a cabinet you're building yourself, 30 1/4 would be what you want to hit for width, for it to drop into. The bottom part is about 2 3/4 inches deep. And coming from the back, about 10 1/4. That should help out anyone who wants to put this inside of a cabinet. That's what you're going to have to build to make it fit in there. Now, another thing that I noticed on this is it's got 4 holes. I'm hoping you can see these on video. 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the pictures online, there are actually screws inside of this. And I'm just going to pull it up on my computer here to make sure that's correct. Yes, the pictures on the website they have screws in here. I expected this to be shipped with screws there, but they're not. But I also understand why they're not. These are the retaining bolts that you would put through the unit if you were connecting it to one of the Xtension arcade cabinet housings. And you can see on the side here that there's 4 holes, but 2 on the other side. Now why is it that there's 4 here and 2 on the other side? Well, I'm assuming 2 of these are for dowels that you would put in to center it, and then the actual locking bolts. Kind of annoying, but at the same time, I understand why it's happening, and it should be fairly easy for me to pick up a few bolts to get this connected to the pedestal when I do actually make it. Another thing stood out at me though. These seem to be a little bit more offset than I would have expected them to be. If I do a quick measurement here, I can see that they're almost at the 1 inch mark on the inside, which means that I would have to extend this out another probably 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch to make it centered on a 3/4 inch edge. So if I'm doing a pedestal cabinet that is 3/4 inch plywood, I'm going to need to make this larger than the original measurement I gave. Otherwise, the bolt's going to go down and it's going to hang over the side. That's a little bit annoying because I'm going to have to redo all of my diagrams. But again, something that I can live with because this is the way it came and I'm making the pedestal around it. Now, given how large this thing is, I don't know if I'm going to continue filming it this way. I'm probably going to do some more close-up shots of it, flip it over, and we'll get working on it from there. One more thing before we do flip it over and open it. Let's address the sharp plexi edges. I have taken my thumb and run it across pretty much all of the sides here a few times. This edge is not sharp whatsoever. I don't know if that was feedback for an earlier model or an earlier revision. This has definitely been laser cut. I can tell from the way the holes have been formed on it. And it looks like afterwards it's gone through some sort of buffing process. So it is absolutely not sharp on the edges. But the plexi does sit up above the T-molding line. So that's something to keep in mind. But is it sharp? Absolutely not. So we can officially cross that off the list. Alright, so I have it flipped over and propped up right now. Actually, oddly enough, I'm using 2 Mad Catz Fight Stick Alpha boxes to hold it up, which are doing a great job. And that should also give you some idea about just how massive this control panel is. And to address, I guess, 2 of the additional concerns that I read online. First is that it doesn't have a bottom cover, and the second is that it has an unfinished bottom. Now, you can clearly see right here, there is a bottom cover on it. Is it the strongest bottom cover in the world? Definitely not. Looks like some melamine-ish coated hardboard. I mean, it's not anything that's super massively structurally sound, but it definitely has a bottom cover, so we can safely cross that off the list. The next one is that it has an unfinished bottom. Now, this can be read a number of different ways. I look at this and I say, this is pretty much an unfinished bottom. I say that because it does not have any feet for it to be resting on a table. It does not have clean edges. You can see the staple marks in it, and you can see the edge of the hardboard. So I would agree that yes, it has an unfinished bottom. Now, is that a major drawback on this? Probably not. If you're buying something like this, you're likely going to be putting it into a cabinet. And if you're not going to be putting it into a cabinet and you're just going to be using it as it is not going to be hard to put 4 or even possibly 6 feet onto the bottom of it. Having said that, as a standalone unit that's being sold, it would have been nice to see a little bit cleaner edges on it. Is that something that would prevent me from buying this? Definitely not. I understand that I'm making something custom, and given, again, the good construction that I'm otherwise seeing on this, it's not going to be a negative point for me. Also, if I was putting this into a Recroom Masters full stand-up unit, everything would line up and it would just drop into place. So that's nothing I'm going to fault them on, as these holes are bored for their own system. It's time to open it up and take a look inside and see what makes this control panel a control panel. I don't know if this voids the warranty. I don't think it does, because it does reference on the website making modifications for advanced users, but I know what I'm doing inside of here. I've modded a lot of sticks in my time. So let's take a look and see what we got. There are 4 Phillips screws that hold the bottom cover on. Now, I have not opened this prior to filming this video, so I don't know what's inside of here. I do know from talking with a few of their customer service reps that they apparently use Brook Universal Fighting Boards. I'm excited to see that. And here we have it. I'm going to go ahead and reset the camera so that we can take a look at kind of one of the sides of these and go from there. Okay, here we have a closer view of the inside of this control board. Everything is pretty much as I expected it to be. I've taken a look here. The joysticks are definitely Sanwa. They have the Sanwa name on both the restrictor gate and the actual unit. We have Sanwa buttons here. We can tell that because they actually have Sanwa markings on them. The illuminated push buttons along the top are not Sanwa. They look like just generic buttons. And like I was expecting, we have 2 Brook Universal Fighting Boards. Now, that's a very interesting choice, and one that we are going to talk about more as we get into this video. Now, from a modding perspective, this thing's great. You would be able to switch out the restrictor plate for anything that you want to, switch out the buttons if you want to change the color on them. The only thing that I don't think you'd be able to easily do is switch out these illuminated buttons, because they look to be slightly smaller than a Sanwa button. I don't know if they conform with a 24mm button. We can definitely check that though. So you can see that everything is wired up to a Brook Universal Fighting Board, and they've actually got 2 of them in here, one for player 1 and one for player 2. It's a very interesting choice. Now, I've just got open here on my computer the listing for the Brook Universal Fighting Boards from Focus Attack, which is where I get most of my parts when I'm actually doing mods on sticks. And just from the listing they have here, I can tell you that this is just the bare Brook Universal Fighting Board. It doesn't have any of the extra stuff added to it. And we can see just from how these are wired that they're running everything through the single line of screw-in terminals. I'm just taking a look here. These are the wires for the power to the LEDs on the buttons, and those look like they are all going through. Where are they going through? They go through a switch, and the switch goes to VCC. Okay, yes, so that makes sense. You have VCC on the Brook Universal Fighting Board. VCC is power. That is going to the switch, which determines whether it's on or off. When it's in the on position, it goes and then chains through all of the LEDs. And it looks like there's one on each side. So, assumably, flipping that switch would turn off the lights for one player or the other player. I don't know how useful that's going to be for my setup. I might just disable the buttons altogether. Or sorry, the lights altogether. Yeah, so that's the inside of it. It's neat, it's clean. There's only one thing that I'm seeing that I don't overly like, and that is on the fighting boards themselves. They are only using 3 standoffs instead of 4. I don't know why they wouldn't just put a 4 standoff on it. I doubt these boards are going to move very much as it is, but it would have been nice to see 4 standoffs per board. Again, a little bit disappointed on the illuminated buttons not being Sanwa, but Sanwa doesn't really make an official illuminated button, so nothing to worry about. Again, these are just the buttons for start, pause, select, and in my case it's going to be coin insert, start, and select. Probably an exit button wired up in there somehow as well. And you're not going to be pushing a ton of those, so I'm not too worried about it. As far as modding goes, I am probably going to pull out both of the joysticks and replace them with the Sanwa silent sticks. I have 2 of those that I've been waiting to use on a project, and I think this is going to be a good one for it. I'm probably also going to put bat tops on them and 8-way restrictors, because I'm not a big fan of 4-way restrictors, as I play mostly MAME games and Neo Geo. With that said, let's just take a look at our list here. We can safely cross off the no Sanwa parts. You know, reading that again, I wonder if they're referring to the illuminated push buttons, but I mean, the bulk of the buttons, the ones that you're going to be using all the time, are Sanwa, so I'm happy to cross that one off the list. If you're following along, that means we only have 3 on here left to address. 8-minute timeout on PS4, and the 2 that talk about it not working on Mac PC, and also the Raspberry Pi or Linux. Now, we can actually address the 8-minute timeout on PS4 issue without even plugging it into a PS4. Now that we know and have verified that this is using actual Brook fighting boards, I can tell you that Brook is incredibly good about updating their firmware on these boards, and any 8-minute timeout issues would have been from when either the board was released, and it got released after a firmware update from Sony where there was an 8-minute timeout, or you may experience an 8-minute timeout after Sony updates its operating system, and you just need to flash the boards. There's lots of documentation on the Brook site about how to flash the firmware on the boards, and that will completely eliminate any sort of 8-minute timeout. The only thing is, I don't know if Recroom Masters flashes these to the latest available firmware before they ship them out, or if these are stock Brook fighting boards. Regardless, it's a non-issue. Now that I know that they're legit Brook fighting boards, anytime I have an issue with a PS4, if I decide to connect one, you can just update the firmware. If anyone out there has one of these that's still experiencing the 8-minute timeout issue on PS4, know that you can just connect this directly to your computer, Windows PC. I don't know if Brook uses or has a Mac program as well, but I know they have a firmware program for Windows that allows you to update the firmware and get around any sort of 8-minute timeout issues. I don't know how long Recroom Masters has been using these Brook fighting boards, but they're really good boards. I've used them for a few stick mods that I've done for friends, and there have never been any issues with them. There's also lots of additional stuff that you can do on these boards. You can put headers here, you can do headers here. You can add a switch onto these that'll allow you to switch between the D-pad and the left and right analog stick. You can also wire up a whole bunch of other stuff to it. So there's a lot of possibilities beyond what we just see here. If you really wanted to, you could extend the daisy chain and put custom buttons in to have everything illuminated. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could set up Blinky software on this and at least in some fashion get an Ultramark board put in here that would allow you to have customized signable LEDs, but that is not what I plan on doing for this project. I'm not actually a huge fan of overly lit control panels or arcade machines in general. This thing is going to stay very stock. I like the gray and black color scheme they picked for it, and we'll probably leave it at that. So with that said, let's get the bottom put back onto it, and we will move to the software side of things. This is where you also kind of see that this is definitely an unfinished bottom. It doesn't have any grooves for it to drop into, and at least if you're dropping this into a pedestal like I plan on it, you're going to want to make sure that you have everything lined up properly. The rest of this review is going to be spent connecting it to various devices and seeing how it shows up. I have a PS4 Pro. I do not have a PS3. I do not have an Xbox 360, and I do not have an Xbox One. I can tell you, however, from previous experience and knowing people that have Brook Universal Fighting boards, that it really does work on all of the machines. The big thing you have to make sure is that it is plugged in before you turn the console on so that it can do its proper auto detect. Having said that, let's find out a little bit more about how this works on Mac and PC, and then its kind of final home, the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is the one I'm most curious about because it doesn't actually say anywhere that it works with the Raspberry Pi, or Linux for that matter. Before we do connect it, just another quick thing that I found that I wanted to point out. The cable that they include is just two mono-price cables. There's nothing special about these USB cables. They're just your typical USB A to B cables. Same kind of cable that you use for a printer. So if you need a longer one or you want to replace them, there's tons of them out there and they're dirt cheap. Whatever you do, don't go to a Best Buy type place and spend 30 bucks on one. You can get a much higher quality cable for less money pretty much anywhere. To test this on my Mac, which is my primary computer, it's an iMac, 27-inch iMac. That's not going to matter whatsoever. It is an Apple computer and it is an actual Apple computer. I'm going to be plugging it in directly through one of my USB hubs, USB 3.0 hub. Again, that shouldn't matter too much at all. I'm going to be trying it through OpenEMU, playing a hacked version of The Legend of Zelda called The Parallel Worlds. Why am I using OpenEMU? Well, it's a pretty good emulator, and it also has a really good control interface, and it can usually pull up the name that something is detecting as. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. Okay, you can see that the buttons have illuminated, and you can see that the switch turns them off and on. We're going to go into the game. I have my volume turned off. And we're going to see how this detects. It is coming up as a P4 wired gamepad V1.6. I would assume that is some iteration of a PS4 wired gamepad. I seem to remember one of my DualShocks showing up that way. Regardless, we're going to select it, and we're going to see if we can assign buttons. Up. Okay, so up, auto detect north, south, west, east, which means it is identifying it as a hat. Select, button 9, start, button 10, then we've got A, B, X, Y, which are detected as buttons 2, 3, 1, and 4 respectively. And then we've got our L and R buttons. And we can just use these two for that. So L and R, which came up as buttons 5 and 6. Yeah, given that that went through properly, I should fully expect that I am able to control the character, which I am. No problems at all. Diagonals are working, all of the actions are working, and all of the buttons are working. Great. Okay, so that's pretty much as I expected it. It is plug and play on Mac. Let's try the PC end of things, which can in some circumstances be a little bit more challenging. For that, I'm going to close down OpenEMU. I'm going to open Parallels. And I'm going to boot into one of my Windows 7 installations. This is a fully legitimate Windows 7 that I've activated with one of my keys. I won't be testing it on Windows 10, as most of the emulation work I do is inside of Windows 7. Alright, we have connected this through Windows 7, and it has come up as a USB input device. I'm going to go into the control panel and see just what kind of device it is coming up as. Under devices, I can again see that Windows has identified it as a P4 wired gamepad, which, just like the Mac, is going to mean that it assigns it button presses and not keyboard inputs. Now, for anyone looking to run this off of a PC for keyboard inputs, you may have some problems here, and you might have to get some sort of software that is going to override a joystick input and make it into a keyboard input, or at least remap it. Also, depending on your application, you might be better off just getting an iPack board, taking out the Brook boards and putting the iPack board in and assigning them key presses directly. But chances are, if you're doing all that, you're not going to be buying this product, or you're going to get the one that is straight keyboard emulation. Not really much more to go through there. The last test, and really the big one, is does it work on the Raspberry Pi? I'm assuming based off of how it works on both of these, it's going to show up as the same P4 input device, but we will see. This addresses one more of the major concerns that are read online, that it does not work with Mac or PC. I would assume for the person who wrote that comment, they probably had something on their computer that either blocked the installation of the basic driver for this, or they didn't know how to configure it for their particular application. Given on Windows that you may run into a situation where you have to do key remapping or key overriding or get third-party programs involved, I would say it's not for the faint of heart, and you probably want to go into it with at least some basic knowledge of how to do that. I've connected this to a Raspberry Pi 3 that's running RetroPie, and I've just done a quick JS test on it. It comes up by default as a Brook P4 wired gamepad v1.6, just like the Mac and the PC, and allows me to press buttons and have corresponding inputs connected with a joystick. Again, just like the Mac and PC, the directions on the joystick come up as hat controls. And yeah, that's about it. That was pretty much the end of the major part of this review. Next thing that I'm going to be doing on it is a little bit of modding. I'm going to replace the sticks, I'm going to put bat tops on them, and I'm going to put 8-way restrictor gates. So if you don't want to watch that part, feel free to just stop now. There's nothing special at the end of the video. But I wanted to quickly go over all of the negatives that I read online and what we determined by going through them. When we took a look inside, we were definitely able to see that the buttons are Sanwa, and so are the joysticks, your normal JLFs. The illuminated push buttons do not appear to be Sanwa buttons, so I would take that and I would say, hey, the main buttons are Sanwa buttons. I am happy to say that this is a Sanwa button joystick. The additional buttons, you're not going to be using them very much. It doesn't matter if they're Sanwa or not. Next point was 8-minute timeout on PS4. Given that this is a Brook Universal Fighting Board, that is updatable through firmware. So if you're ever experiencing 8-minute timeout, it's likely that the PS4 has updated its firmware, and you would just need to wait until Brook releases an update of their own. Next point was sharp edges on the Plexi. We've gone over this. I've put my finger around it more than a few times. It is not sharp whatsoever, so I'm not going to view that as a negative. Unfinished bottom. Yes, there's a bit of an unfinished bottom on it, but it's nothing to really worry about. If you're going to be using this as a standalone controller, just throw some feet on the bottom of it. No bottom cover, inaccurate. There's definitely a bottom cover on it. No measurements for putting into something or putting into a cabinet of your own. They list measurements on the website. I think it would be nice if they put measurements for what the inner box dimensions are for actually dropping it into something. I think that's really one of my biggest negatives on this entire stick is, I'm just going to move the camera over a little bit here. The 2 points here that would hold the retaining bolts, they don't really match up with where a piece of wood would be underneath it to keep it nice and sandwiched in there. It would have been nice to see them moved over, you know, even an 1/8 of an inch just so they lined up a little bit better, but nothing to really worry about. If this is going to be gravity dropped into a pedestal, it's not coming out on its own. The thing weighs about 25 pounds, so I doubt someone's going to rip it out of there. Next one is it does not work on the Mac or PC. That's definitely inaccurate. It worked on both of them when I tested. And of course the last one was that it does not work on the Raspberry Pi. And I've tested it on my Raspberry Pi 3 and it's working just fine. The exact same way that it worked on the Mac or the PC. So I think this would be a really, really good choice if you're building a custom pedestal unit or a custom arcade that's going to be running on the Raspberry Pi, as it pretty much is just plug and play. Now, let's go over a little bit of the price on everything. I was able to use a coupon that I found online for this to get it for $349 US. That's a pretty big investment for a Canadian like me. After conversion and everything, it ran me over $500. It was shipped via UPS. I did not have to pay additional fees at the door. I think I got lucky on that one. If I were to buy the parts to make this myself, I would guess that I'm looking at probably just over $300 US to get everything. The Brook Universal Fighting Boards are about $90 each. And to get a Sanwa stick as well as Sanwa buttons, that's probably going to run you 40 or 45 US. So, I don't know, honestly, for the price of it, I think this is probably right around what I would spend to make my own. And this is very professionally done. One thing that I haven't touched on for this is the artwork. The artwork is fully customizable. Recroom Masters does provide a template that you can use to make your own artwork for it. They also have a service that you can use where they'll either design artwork for you or you can pick from some pre-done artwork. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to make my own artwork for it. I'm a pretty big fan of it as it stands. It's black, it's gray, it's going to fit in with the theme of my arcade pretty well, and it's going to look very nice next to my pinball machine. My final thoughts on it are fantastic unit. I'm really happy with the quality of the parts that are inside of it. I'm really impressed with the quality of the build on it. I wish that it had come with feet, or at least somehow could be used as a standalone for those that want to use it that way. But honestly, for what I paid for it, I think it's fantastic bang for your buck. Arcades are really, really hot right now, and I don't think there's anything on the market that is as well made as this control panel is for the money that you're spending. When it comes to modding, I'm not going to have to do much to make this into an even better fight stick, and the changes that I'm going to make are very personal changes. So if I got this out of the box, I think 9 out of 10 people would be perfectly happy with it as it is. So Recroom Masters, big thumbs up to you. You guys knocked this one out of the park. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section. I try and get back to them as soon as I can. Alright, we are at the modding portion of this video. From this point out, just like my other videos, no outtakes, no stopping. I might pause the camera temporarily if something comes up, but otherwise I want you guys to follow along and see what the entire process is like from front to back. I'm going to start with taking the back plate off. Just because this is only particle board I'm drilling into, you probably want to limit the number of times you're opening it up. Now, my plans originally for this were to take out the joysticks and also replace... Actually, sorry, so take out the joysticks, replace them with Sanwa silent sticks, and then put bat tops onto them. I don't know if I'm actually going to put bat tops onto them. When I was trying out the stick, I actually quite liked the ball tops that were on them. And that fits kind of more in line with the Sanwa look and feel. Just seeing what parts I've got kicking around right now. This is my bin of various extra Sanwa parts. I've got enough green buttons to do 6. I don't think I'd want this to be green. Got some horrendous joystick here. That's not Sanwa. I'll use that for something else. We have various ball tops rolling around, and yes, here we go. So these are the good Sanwa silent sticks. Again, there is nothing wrong with the 6 that came with these. These are normal Sanwa joysticks. I just don't like the clicking, and because of that, I invested and got the silent ones. They were very expensive, even more so to get into Canada. And it looks like I've got one 8-way restrictor gate. I sure hope I have a second one. That is not. That is a 4-way. Ah, there we go. Perfect. One of them's already on there. I probably put this into something and then took it out. And what other useful parts do I have here? Oh, okay, so kind of a neat thing, not related to this whatsoever, but the silent sticks come with this one-piece 4-way restrictor gate, which is kind of neat. If you take a look at a normal 4-way restrictor gate, I don't know if that's a Sanwa one. You know what? Let's just tear it off with this. If you look at a normal Sanwa restrictor gate, it's actually something that you can pop out. So I can push that middle piece. Not sure if you can see it there on camera, but I can push that right out. This is all one piece. This is apparently very popular amongst the fighting game fans who, for whatever reason, sometimes have an issue where this pops out mid-play. So yeah, Sanwa does make all-in-one pieces. Kind of neat. All right, we are going to go get the right socket that I need to take the bolts off of this. We are going to put plates onto my Sanwa sticks, and we are going to get replacing this. All right, let's kick this off by taking out the Sanwa sticks that come in it. Clear the work area. We are going to, this is already disconnected, so we'll just take that off. And I need to take off the ball top from this guy. Flathead screwdriver is pretty loose on there. Now, any deficiencies that I kind of find in the modding process, I'm not going to hold Recroom Masters to that. You know, they sell a unit that's ready to go. So that's off. Now we need to find which socket they've used. I'm going to get out my long sockets. And I'm going to wonder if that's just a 3/8. And it is. Getting a cheap socket set is a fantastic idea. Yeah, this is not very tightly in there. So, I mean, because we got a plexi layer, we don't want this to be super tight, but I would have expected it to be a little bit tighter. It's actually spinning a little bit, so I'm just going to take a quick look underneath. They're using front-facing Phillips screws. They could have put carriage bolts in this, and then no one could take a screwdriver to it, but this also isn't for commercial applications, so I don't think they're too concerned about that. Okay, that's one done. be reusing these bolts on the replacement stick. I'm just looking, they've got, I guess they put some sort of something on it. Some Loctite-ish type spray or goop. Didn't seem to do too much. 1 down, 3 to go. This is kind of awkward to do with the camera, but we'll do our best. Yeah, I can definitely feel where that goop is. All right, number 2 is off. Number 3. It looks like the wiring harness that they've got on the JLF is just the normal wiring harness with the open ends that are going into the Brook fighting board. Past that, they're just using a generic black wire. It's actually got 2 different sizes on it. Yeah, it's pretty sloppy. Yeah, so if you look here, the grounding connectors that they've put on, which is daisy chained, is your proper Sanwa fit ones, but the individual connections they've got on are the larger connections from HAP style buttons. It doesn't make any difference, it's just kind of sloppy. Wonder why they did that. I guess the HAP ones were cheaper. Trying not to move my hand on the bottom because I don't want to scratch any of the plexi while I'm doing this. Definitely is a little bit of play here, which is good because things rarely line up perfectly unless it's laser cut. Even then, with wood, any sort of moisture causes warping. Even leaving it out after can cause warping. Okay, 4th bolt is off. This should be free. Everyone knows black is ground. These are the 4 directions. This is the way it plugs in. Oh, well, there you go. There's the PCB. Pull that off. This all comes up, and voila. Now let's make sure this is all Sanwa. Yeah, there's Sanwa at the bottom there. And I mean, the micro switches aren't made by Sanwa. They're made by Omron, and these are actual Omron ones. So, yeah, it is completely a Sanwa stick. Now, in all my infinite wisdom, I don't believe I remembered to order new plates. So we're going to have to use the plates off of this. Take off the plate. You just unscrew the 4 screws here. Actually, I can tell that Recroom Masters would have gotten these probably without the plates. Oh no, that's a lie. That's a lie. You see on the back here, they've got the red goop in there, which means that it came out of the factory like that. Which means it's going to be a little bit tougher to get these off. So, good tip for these is use a bigger screwdriver. If you're finding your screwdriver slipping a lot, it means you're not using the right sized one. Like me, I have pretty much wrecked that one screw. But I'm pretty sure I also have extra screws. Because that's one of those things you do once and you never do again. Some S plates I've got. Wiring harness I ordered. That's a ground cable I ordered. It's not what I need. Miscellaneous bag of stuff. We got some clear buttons, we got some silencer pads. Ooh, silencer pads. So silencer pads are made by Focus Attack directly, and they allow you to put them into existing SandWall buttons so that when you click, they're a little bit muffled. I don't know, I mean, they're pretty cool. If you're really worried about noise, throw them in, but I find just the clicking of the joystick is what ticks me off the most. But, here we go. 2 sets of new screws and bolts for JLFs. I think those were like $1 or $2 off of Focus Attack. So, good news about those is I can pretty much wreck the bolts that are on here right now. We have extracted the plate off of the SandWall stick, and we're going to put it onto one of the silence sticks now, which of course I have put down and cannot find. This is going to be a two-parter. We're going to pull the 4-way off of it. Okay, it is free. You can see here the Omron silent switches, which are very nice. Put that back on. I'm going to grab one of the 8-ways, pop that on right here. Then we're going to put a new plate on it. Now with these, they were sitting in there like this. Plate's going to go on this way. I'm going to use one of the screw sets we've got here. Try and not lose anything. And just go one by one. And of course, I have forgotten that you have to take the restrictor gate off to actually do this. Alright, with the restrictor gate off and the switch plate out, you can see that we've got our main assembly here. Put it in like that. And this one looks like I left nuts in there. So I'm just going to need to screw down the new ones. Could have avoided all of this if I had just ordered an extra plate. Once these are all in here, go back around, give them another quick tighten. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and put this back on. Snap the restrictor gate back on. And this is pretty much good to go. Grab those 4 bolts. Just going to get them all started. And really the most critical part of this is I want to make sure that I don't over tighten them and crack the plexi. So I'm going to get them all the way there and probably give them a ratchet or 2 just to get them tight against the plexi. So we will get these finger tight. And we're going to put a screwdriver underneath. And that'll be it for tightness. Second to last step is to reconnect this. Again, we want to make sure it follows the same way. If we put it in upside down, it won't work. Slide that right on. Black on the right side, and then your up, down, left, right. And the last step on this, I'm just going to use the original ball. I don't think I'm going to put the bat top on this. So we're going to put the washer and dust shield. Ball top in. Get it screwed on there. Take the flathead, pop it in, and then just tighten. And that is done. Now, I'm not going to show doing the other half of the stick because it's the exact same process and it's actually quite hard to do with the camera running, but that is it. It is done. I may decide to come back later and do some modifications to the buttons, put the silence pads in, or potentially even put some inserts into the clear buttons. But if I do that, I'll do a separate video on it. I hope everyone's enjoyed it, and again, if you have anything you want to ask me about this, please leave a comment in the comments section. Thanks much, bye-bye.